Hello! I'm making this video for technical people to give you some tips on how to communicate your technical ideas using storytelling techniques. So my name's Jamie. I'm the author of The Story Habit. I'm a leadership storytelling coach, and I've been doing this since 2011. I've worked throughout Asia and Europe, and I've worked with thousands of technical people, many of whom all have the same challenges when it comes to communicating their ideas. Maybe the audience just don't understand their ideas. Maybe this technical person doesn't even know where to start with their presentations and with their explanations, or maybe they completely overwhelm the audience and bombard them with too many details. So if that sounds like a challenge you have, then in this video I'm going to give you 4 tips to help you use storytelling techniques to communicate your ideas effectively. So let's get straight into it. So I always like to start my storytelling workshops with a fable to put things into context. So I'm going to do that in this video as well. So here is the fable. You come from a village far, far away on a mission to spread a new technology to make people's lives easier. For centuries, families in villages throughout the known world have been milling grain by hand. They would place the grain between 2 stones, and then using their own strength, they would operate the millstone to crush the grain to make it easier to make bread with. But this was very labor intensive, and most families would spend hours every day doing this. In your village, however, you came up with a new invention. Your family house was located next to a fast-flowing river, and you realized that you could use the power of water to mill your grain for you. So you worked hard for many years to invent a contraption that would use the power of water to move the millstones. And after much experimenting and failing, eventually you succeeded. Your invention is called the watermill. The watermill freed your family from hours of exhausting labor each day. You shared this new technology with your fellow villagers, and they're all so much happier. And with all this extra free time, they spend more time on leisure activities, inventing new technologies, and starting new and exciting businesses. Now you are traveling the known world to share this new technology with others. But you discover it's not so easy to persuade them to adopt it. So now that we have the fable, we'll come back to that as we go through the tips throughout the rest of the video. So let's get into the tips now. Tip number 1. Put things in context. So when you approach villagers throughout this world to introduce them to this alien technology called a watermill, you can't just go up to them and say, "I've got this great thing, here it is," because there's no context there. So it's very difficult for them to understand. Now, a simple way of thinking about context is that it's like a journey, and you need to take your audience on a journey. A journey has a starting point, and it has a destination. It has a path from here to there. It has action steps along the path, and it also has a purpose for going from here to there. And if we can explain each of these individual elements, then we can put things into context for our audience, and they can see how all the details fit into the bigger picture. So if I was going to go to a random village and introduce them to this alien technology, I'd reference their starting point, which is you all have to mill grain by hand every day, and this is exhausting and it takes many, many hours. I'd also point to a destination. Well, I've got this new technology that will do all the milling for you, and that will free up hours every day and save you a lot of energy as well. And as you just heard, I touched upon the purpose just there as well. It will free you up from hours of exhausting manual labor every single day. You'll have more time to do other things and to enjoy life. And then I need to introduce the path from here to there. And the path is that I will teach you how to build this technology called a watermill. I will show you what resources we need to gather. I will show you where we need to build the watermill, and I will show you how to build the watermill. And then you will have a watermill that you can use all by yourself. So if you want to put things into context for people, think of context as a journey, and you want to show them the destination that they're going to and where they are right now and the reason to travel from there to the destination and the pathway that's going to take them there and all of the individual action steps. If you can present your technical ideas as a journey for them with each of those individual elements, you'll put things into context, and it'll be a lot easier for them to process any detailed information that you give them as you go through. Tip number 2, metaphors and analogies. These are my favorite things from the field of storytelling, and they are particularly useful for technical communication because metaphors and analogies allow you to explain really complex ideas very quickly. They are basically when we take an idea that they know really well and say that our idea is exactly like that. So if I was to introduce this alien technology of a watermill, I would say it's a bit like a horse. You know how a horse frees you up from having to do so much walking, and it actually takes you really, really far as well, further than you could get by walking. Well, a watermill is exactly the same. It will free you up from having to do all this exhausting work, and it will actually allow you to mill even more grain than you could do by hand. So a little tip for finding effective analogies and metaphors: think of your audience and things they know really well. Maybe they know other technologies, and those could be a great source of analogies. But also think of categories of things that everyone knows. Things like daily rituals like brushing our teeth and waking up and having a shower. Things like cities and public transport. Or if you want one really safe category of analogies and metaphors, then that is nature. Everyone understands nature, and so if you want a safe category of analogies, look for something in nature and you'll be able to present your idea in a way that they understand really quickly. So that's the power of analogies and metaphors. Now let's go to tip number 3. The next tip is to break it down. So if you are an experienced driver, think back to when you learned how to drive. Everything was overwhelming. To turn a corner, you had to do so many things. You had to master clutch control. You had to change gears. You had to look in the mirror. You had to signal. You had to then turn the steering wheel, and so on, all whilst paying attention to the traffic conditions around you. Those are actually multiple steps that you had to master at once. But if you are an experienced driver, then when you do that now, you have condensed it all into one step, which is just drive. So for you as an experienced driver, it's very easy. For a beginner driver, your one step becomes multiple steps. Now, this is where the curse of knowledge comes from. The curse of knowledge is a problem that many technical and subject matter experts experience. It is when we understand something so deep that we've forgotten the fundamental building blocks of our knowledge. And so when we start our explanations or presentations, we start them at too high a level and we end up speaking a completely different language to our audience. And so the solution to overcoming the curse of knowledge is to break it down into steps. A simple principle here is to remember 1 is a dozen. 1 step for an expert is up to a dozen steps for a beginner. It might not be a dozen steps, it might be 5 or 6 steps, it might be 2 or 3 steps, but it's definitely going to be more than 1 step. So if you can break your knowledge down into different steps, up to a dozen steps for 1 step that you take, you can then get down to their level and explain things step by step at their level. So for example, if we're going to a new village and we're introducing them to this alien technology of a water mill, obviously there is a lot of engineering behind that. There are probably new concepts that we need to teach them about. We have to break down how it works. For example, maybe you are trying to introduce them to the idea of momentum, something that maybe they've never heard of before. You might have to start with something more basic, showing how when a rock rolls down a hill, it gets faster and faster the further it moves. And then you go into the water mill and explain how it's the same thing. You start step by step. And for a lot of technical experts, what I find they have to do is revisit when they first learnt all of these technical ideas and regain awareness of the fundamental building blocks of their knowledge and work with those to explain their ideas to their audience. When you can go back down to that level, you can then speak a language that your audience will understand. And for my final tip, show, don't tell. If you are trying to present technical ideas to people, you're going to have a lot of very technical details that are very difficult for people to process. Don't tell them those details, show them instead. If you are going around to these different villages trying to teach them of this alien technology called a water mill, you would be much better off if you could actually carry a miniature model of a water mill to show them how it works and to show them that it can even generate enough power to move a stone. If you can show them, you don't need to tell them, and then they won't get overwhelmed with all of these details. This is also what a lot of products and services do to help persuade customers. They allow customers to actually experience that product or service before making a decision. Another way of using show, don't tell is to do a demonstration. So think of yoga classes, for example. Yoga instructors, they will never stand at the front of the class and tell you how to do the move. They will show you. So when we're speaking to those villages with our new technology, if we can demonstrate with a model, then they're going to find it a lot easier to appreciate what it could do for them. And another thing we can do is to tell stories. Tell stories of how our technology has helped other people. We can tell stories of other villages where they installed the water mills and how it benefited them and the kind of lifestyles that they're living right now. So if you want to communicate effectively and you've got a lot of details, don't tell them the details, show them the details instead, and they will find it a lot easier to understand what you're trying to say. So thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you found it useful. If you're interested in learning any more about what I do, you can check out my website, thestoryhabit.com. Thanks and all the best with your technical presentations.